Hi, welcome back to the Always Right podcast. I'm author Karisa DeLay.
And I'm author Jaime Vendera, and I am super excited about today.
We have a guest with us.
Yes.
Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Ginny. I'm a software engineer and I work for Sudowrite, the creative writing software. Super stoked to be here.
I'm so excited. Yes. Sudowrite reached out and they heard our episode where we were like, we want more videos, all these things. And now they're here. They're going to help us and you listeners and those aspiring writers and figure out how this program can work for you as an author, writer, whatever you want to do as far as in that realm. But first, let's find out a little bit more about Ginni. Ginni, tell us about who you are, just in general, outside of Sudowrite, your degrees, anything that you want to put in there about who you are.
Yeah, great question. So, like I said, I am a software engineer for Sudowrite, but I am a mid-career changer. I actually don't really have training in traditional computer science. I went to school for classics and philosophy. So I studied like ancient Greek stuff and read a lot of Homer. And then I became a personal organizer. So I would go to your house and help you like declutter things and go through your garage. I did a lot of move management. And after I did that for a number of years, I decided I needed to switch tacks, mostly because I was very tired and I wanted to like spend more time sitting in a chair. And I studied computer science and software engineering on my own for a few years and eventually landed a job at Sudowrite, which has been incredible because the one thing I'm probably most passionate about is reading. I'm a huge reader. I love books. Books are my everything. I mean, you don't go to school for learning Homer if you don't love books.
Right.
So yeah, it's been phenomenal.
It sounds like you have functional ADHD like Jaime and I. Like, you're like, I want to try this, I want to try that. You just manage it and makes it function.
I don't know if I have it. I've never been diagnosed, but I am surrounded by people who have ADHD. Like they are my people and I love them. I don't always understand them, but I love them.
Sounds like me and Karisa.
Yes. Yeah, except for like I figured out the code and sometimes JB's like all over the place. He's just got to kind of insert the code.
Yep.
So tell us your role at Sudowrite.
Yeah, so I'm one of the core engineers. We actually have a pretty small team. I think there are 5 software engineers right now. So there is, I was the 4th engineer that got hired on. And now we are 5, and it's everybody just kind of does a little bit of everything on the engineering squad. Because we are such a small team, it's not really like categorized into like you work on the front end and you work on the back end. We develop ideas for features together as a team. We interview our users, we interview authors, we think of things that we can build to like help solve problems that writers have, and then one person on the team will get assigned one of these that gets prioritized and we build it.
Right. You guys are quick because I literally signed up to Sudowrite maybe 3 months ago for the novel import. And there was just some confusion the way I was asking questions like, yeah, we're actually working on that. And it wasn't ready at that time. But I was like, and I'm like, you're going to smack me. But I got to be honest. It's like, well, I don't know if I can use this. I might have just joined for nothing. And boom, your team was right on it. I said, nope, hang in there. It's like within weeks and bam, it was there.
Yeah,
so I appreciate it.
Well, I have to say, novel import is my baby. I was a big part of novel import. So
then I love you, and we're going to become best friends because I need it. I need it. Like I said, I have all these books. I'm working on this series, Age of the Sigil. It's a 4-book series. The 3 are done. And I'll ask questions about it here in a little bit, but that's really why I did it. I'm like, I don't have time. I need something to help me get this book done so I can move on to the next.
Yeah, and I had researched different fiction softwares to help authors get organized, and Sudowrite came up as one of the top rated ones. So I was like, I'm gonna try this one out, just see what it's. For me, a lot of times when I'm trying something, I will download something, especially when I'm traveling. I'll do the travel apps, and there are a couple of them, but the face of it and how it operates is what sells me. Is
Yeah.
this user friendly? Is this something that I'm going to be able to navigate easily? Is this something that when I look at it, I'll feel overwhelmed? That's just how my brain works. Now, some people do like a lot of like, tabs and all these things and searching it out, but that's just not me. So Sudowrite was very pleasing to the eye. For the most part, it was easy to navigate. I figured a lot of it out. But that's why I was like, I need more videos to know the capabilities of certain things. But I told Jaime, I'm like, you have got to use this. You've got to see how this works. This is going to help you organize these books, and you can build this world. You can brain dump all these things that you can do. And so he got on there. And then we have an author. We haven't yet signed her, but we have had her on, and she's in the editing process, kind of like going through her book. But I turned her on to Sudowrite as well. And I said, listen, you have a lot going on with your book. This would be a great way to organize it. You've already written the manuscript, import stuff. And she texts me one day. She's like, big bold letters, love Sudowrite. Oh my gosh, this helped me so much. So and that's the thing. I'm so excited because I feel like people are so leery with AI and all this stuff, but it's not the typical AI. It's more of like a helpful tool for people.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it. I will not disrespect any other company that's doing
No.
the same thing as you, but I looked at other formats. No, there was nothing that compared to this. I'm just being totally honest.
For your brain, for you, the way you.
Yeah, for my brain, it was like yes, and it's like it's perfect. And even like over the weekend, putting the novels in, I was like, it kind of fried my brain because I'm like, oh my gosh, it gave me all of these ideas. But it's more like talking to a friend, like, oh, I don't know where to take this story. So it wasn't in an AI in that sense, like it's generic. It was really thought provocative. So I have a lot of different scenarios like, oh, I never even thought about taking this book in that direction.
So with that mention, Jenny, why don't you tell us what the mission is for Sudowrite to our listeners so we know exactly what we're dealing with here?
Yeah, so one of the things that we really strive for is like making sure that the author remains like the creative head in charge of the product, right? We're not trying to build something that's going to like write everything for you. We are trying to build something that can give you ideas, that can help you edit, that can maybe speed things up. But at the end of the day, like you're still going to have to contribute and be a big managing member of like all of your creative ideas, right? And then I liked what you mentioned, Karisa, about how it's easy to kind of like just jump in and figure it out. So something we notice about the AI space in particular is it can get really technical and complex really fast. And there's a lot of like knobs and dials that you can turn and things you need to know to kind of come up with something you want. So it's something that sounds good, something that sounds like you. So we try to make it really easy to do that and have it like just work, especially for beginners in the AI space, like maybe people who haven't played very much with AI before. But we're also trying to make it really customizable for people that have been using Sudowrite for a long time, are starting to build up their knowledge of the AI space and what they can do and like all these technical terms and experiment and try new things. One of our designers has a framework where he talks about this as having low floor, wide walls, high ceiling. So it's like low entry point, beginners can use it. It just works. You don't have to dive into the complexity too much to get something you want. Wide walls, it can do a lot of different things. So it can appeal to a wide variety of workflows. And then high ceilings, like as you advance, you can still use the product. You don't like graduate from it. Those kind of our philosophy.
Yeah. We were talking about, it was funny because we were talking about the little knobs you can turn and dials. I instantly imagined the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain, just all these knobs and dials, and like pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
Yeah. Pay no attention
behind AI. Okay. So something that when you are in Sudowrite as an engineer, do you feel it's very important to have experience in writing or passion for writing to kind of understand the author's perspective?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think that my background in particular as somebody who like has studied literature extensively and is aware of like kind of I don't know if it's the publishing zeitgeist. I think I'm more aware of the publishing zeitgeist at Sudowrite now than I was as a reader, but I'm very like in the book world, right? I read all the listicles and recommendations all the time because I read probably 100 books a year. So yeah, I think it really informs the way that I code. It's really important for us to listen to our audience, to listen to authors, to see what problems they're really having. I think a lot of bigger AI companies like OpenAI, like Anthropic, are trying to build these assistants that help you kind of with everything. And, they're good at writing emails. They're good at helping you figure out how to write a thank you letter for grandma, that kind of thing. But we're really trying to dial into this one specific niche, this one specific workflow for writers in particular. And they have very specific problems that an AI that's developed for writing emails isn't going to solve, because you don't want your book to sound like an email. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Absolutely. So do you write? Do you have any ideas?
I write, but I write in a way that gives me a lot of respect for people who are actually able to complete what they write. I write in the way where I'll get an idea and it will completely overtake me, and I'll write 10 pages of this idea, and then it will go into a box and I will never touch it ever again.
Well, there's this software company like Sudowrite. If you put your stuff into there, it may help you finish.
Yeah, I had a moment like that where we are working on training this new model that's specifically for creative writing. It's narrative smart. It's based on literature. It's trying to do something really engaging and gripping, really dialing into quality prose. And obviously I'm an engineer, so I get to do some of the internal testing on that. And I was doing some internal testing, and I had this idea and I put it in. And normally for me, this would peter out after 6-7 paragraphs. I wrote for 8 hours straight. I forgot to eat dinner. I was so excited. Every time I would get to that point where my brain was like, oh, I don't really know what comes next, and I would get distracted and maybe move away from it, I would just jump right back on, and it would come up with something that would be really exciting for me. I stayed up way too late past my bedtime. I think I'm going to write a book. I think I'm going to do it.
How many people I know over the past decades and decades who have told me, I'm writing a book. Oh, when did you start? At 1996. I got 3 chapters. This right here.
Right?
Yes. So many people have a book inside of them and they never, ever get to the finish line.
They get that fuel in the beginning, and they're going, they have writer's block, and then they get stopped and they don't continue. But this would be a great avenue. It could almost be the key to writer's block, Sudowrite.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the major problems that we try to address, that authors have, right, is this idea of writer's block, especially these days where, the world is not really paying you as much as it used to for your work, right? You can get a Kindle book for $1.99, $2.99. So people have to write a lot more than they used to. And I think the ability to increase your speed and put out a larger number of works so that you can support yourself full time as an author, that's another really big benefit of software like this.
Yeah. So, what are some of the challenges that you in Sudowrite have faced, and how'd you overcome them? Or are you maybe just still stuck on something?
Yeah. I mean, I think there are a number of kind of balancing issues that we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. One of them is kind of this evolution of the LLM models that we use. And like I said, a lot of the big companies that are building these models are really making them for things like email, which is very bland. And the great thing is the models are getting smarter, so they're more capable of doing a lot of things. But we're finding that as this happens and the models get smarter and smarter, the prose that they generate gets more and more boring. The early models, the early models are much more likely to come up with something that feels fresh and interesting and something you haven't heard before. And the models that are smarter and more evolved, they have more data, so they're more likely to repeat human cliches, right? It's every opening is a dark and stormy night. Every first chapter is she wakes up in the morning and the sun is streaming in through her window.
Okay, that's the opening paragraph to chapter 1 for my book. I'm going to remove that one.
I had a roommate who, for many years, we lived together for like 6, 7 years, and he went to Tisch and he studied playwriting at Tisch. And he was constantly writing it wasn't his day job, but he had a day job, and then he would come home and he would write. And I think maybe a few times a week he would come out of his room and he would be like, why do I always write things and they start when they wake up, and then I have to throw out the first 3 pages of them waking up? You know what I mean?
Sadly, I do.
I do the same thing. We all do it. And the
Yeah.
LLM kind of mimics our tendency to do this. So that's one of the reasons we have behind training this new model, is to have something that really surprises you with its metaphors. It's not relying on cliches. It's going to come up with something new and interesting that's going to try and grab you and hook you.
Well, I like that aspect, because sometimes I feel like you get, and we had this on one of the episodes. I told Jaime, because over a year ago, we did an episode on AI. We just broadly spoke about it. And we were like, okay, we're going to take this next year, essentially. We're going to experiment. So Jaime experimented on his end. I experiment on my end with the open AI. I have it on my laptop. I have it on my phone. So just playing around with it, just being like, oh, let's see what it does. And the one thing that, me being creative, but I also have a science-oriented mind, I notice patterns.
Yeah.
And I noticed a pattern with AI. There is a certain pattern that how it responds. Like, even like the amount of sentencing, and then before it jumps to a paragraph, it's very rhythmic how it responds. So I saw that, and then I have like 15 hours left at Arizona State University for my degree. And I was in a class last session that a student literally was answering the prompt from the professor with AI. And I saw it. I'm like, this is AI. This is straight AI. Like, so I even went in and asked AI the same prompt, and it came up almost verbatim what this kid had put out there. So I did privately message the professor, because he was an older guy, and I said, hey, just so you know, this is AI. This kid did not write this. I didn't give his name. I said, but someone in the prompting did not write it. They just regurgitated AI. And I feel like that's the problem a lot of times with AI, that people think everybody's doing. And I'm here to say that that's not what Sudowrite is. And I feel like it gets this bad rap. But with that, I want to move on to the question of the benefits of AI, which kind of umbrellas Sudowrite at the same time. So can you, from your perspective, give us your intake and insight of what the benefits of AI are?
Yeah, I mean, I think a big one is the one I just mentioned. It's this idea of speed, right? This idea where today, because writing material isn't quite as valued as it used to be, you need to produce a lot more. So with AI, you can just generate a lot more content. We have a user who writes books with his whole family. He's got like a couple kids and his wife, and they all write books.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and they have started their own like family-owned independent publishing house. So they all write books and they independently publish them. And a lot of them are like middle grade novels. So they'll go around to schools, they'll tour, and they'll say something like, hey, we'll give you 100 books for free if you let us talk to the kids, right? And I don't know if you guys remember the Scholastic catalogs that we used to get back in the day.
We talk about that, because I was going to buy posters and I was going to buy this. Yep.
Yeah. And they'd give you, there would be some where you'd get like book 1 in the series for free. And it's a little bit like the drug dealers, like giving you your first like hit for free. You know what I mean? And it's like, well, like, book 1 was free, but book 2 is $12.99. And I'm like, well, I have to know what's going to happen. And oh, by the way, there's 11 books in this series. So I'm going to read all 11.
You're missing the mark, Jaime. You could be a book dealer.
I'm set up
you
like
finish
that.
the series.
Yeah. So, I think that speed thing is a big part of it. Like you're talking about this writer's block issue. You guys spoke a little bit about the ADHD thing. We have a lot of users who actually tell us they have ADHD, right? Because when you do, it's very hard to stay focused. You need something that's like constantly grabbing you and constantly exciting you, because the dopamine levels just aren't there, right? So we have a lot of people who say, I've never been able to sit down and focus, but with Sudowrite, with AI, with this like constantly idea generating thing, I can, because there's always something to grab me. So that's been really nice to see. healthy. And then, people who have other kind of health issues making writing more accessible. We had one user who was like a feng shui expert, and he was writing the memoir of his life because he got diagnosed with cancer. So here he is, he's going through chemo. He's very tired. It's very hard for him to sit down and write. His thought process is, slowing down a lot. But AI makes it more feasible for him to like finish his memoirs at a place in his life where he's like, well, there's maybe more of a time limit on this now than I initially thought. So we really like the idea of making writing and creating and publishing and getting your thoughts out into the world more accessible like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like that's just something that people don't realize, that the benefits of AI with just and I think about this because I'm thinking, how often in the past has some type of ease come into the market and people are like, oh my gosh, this is going to change everything. People are no longer do this and that, but it's always happening and people embrace it, like caller ID. I mean, oh, now we're going to know everybody that calls. Phones in general, just like, oh, now I'm going to be able to call you from across the street. No one's going to visit anybody anymore because we'll have phones. Or no one with television. Every time there's a new technology, there's always this grand theory that's going to take over the world. Not that I don't think that Tesla's AI robots might take over the world, but
I tell you, but that's what got me over the hump, because if you remember, even last year, I was thinking, I don't know if I could use ChatGPT for anything. But then I thought about how, with music, they used to record the tape. And then they went to ADA, and then they went to digital. Now everybody does everything on a laptop. And everyone's like, that's going to take away engineers' jobs and all of this. And no, I think
you have to have some, it's like they don't, I don't think people understand that. So with that, maybe you can explain, as an engineer with some background knowledge, where do you feel AI is going to take us in the future with writing?
That's a really great question. And I'll be honest with you, anything I posit is a total guess. The AI space is so new right now, and everything is changing so fast that it's very difficult to say, even in a year, I think we will be doing this. I mean, ChatGPT hit the public like what, a year and a half ago? Maybe, like, I don't even think it's been public for 2 years yet. Like, that's insane.
It may be, because I know that Snapchat, my kids were using the chat bot type thing to have that was like a new thing a couple years ago, and they were having these correspondence with the chat bot. And I know that kids even use this for their homework.
Oh yeah,
because it makes researching so much easier.
But you have to be careful researching with LLMs, right? Because they will lie to you.
Yes.
They will do that.
Yes. And that's something maybe you can explain to people, that I feel like that's something where people will get caught. That's a couple of parameters I want to talk to you about, is like the legality of using AI as a writer, with plagiarism, because obviously AI is an open field of researching what's already existing and then kind of collaborating, correct? To create new content.
So basically, these LLMs are trained on massive proprietary data sets that like we don't really have insight into, because OpenAI, who makes the GPTs, and Anthropic, they're not like telling us what they're training their models on. But you can assume that like everything ever written at this point has probably gone into these models.
Well, yes and no. I've been testing. So I will do things even for episodes, like when I'm trying to generate a thought process. I'm like, okay, I wonder if this, I will go in and it will only give me stuff the month that I'm in 1 year behind. Anything within that year does not exist in it.
Yeah, there's typically a training cutoff date. So they'll train it on everything, and then they'll stop the training process, at which point it doesn't know. I had to explain this to my mom the other day. She has ChatGPT on her phone now, and she likes to ask ChatGPT about the news. And so she was like, "Why can't I get the Dodgers score from ChatGPT?" And I'm like, "Well, the Dodgers are playing like right now, Mom, and ChatGPT's training cutoff date is like 2022, so it doesn't know who's winning, the Dodgers and the Yankees."
Just go to regular Google for
Yeah, it's just like, well, how do I figure it out? And I was like, well, you could turn on the TV and like watch the game.
Yes, especially because that's your mother, and she's an older generation that's trying to use AI in that scenario. So that's very fascinating.
But
That
she
she,
finds it really useful for a lot of
yeah.
things. Like my mom's she's a graphic designer, so she still has a studio, and she occasionally does work for some like nonprofits and a lot of clubs and stuff that she's a part of.
Mhm.
And she has this printer, which is a great printer, but it's probably 15 years old. Like
But it
maybe
still works.
maybe older. It still works, and it's a laser printer, so it's like fast and high quality, and it prints great color stuff, and she knows how it works, which is the most important part.
Mhm.
But it does occasionally die because it's like it should be dead. It's like a 15, 20-year-old printer, and she doesn't know how to fix it or how to get it to her, talk to her computer or whatever. And so she asked ChatGPT, and ChatGPT does help her with that.
Mhm.
Wow.
Which is great because it means she's not calling me every 5 seconds.
Love you, Mom.
Yeah, I do. I love my mom. My mom's the best. She's probably going to listen to this, so I feel bad.
It's okay. It's okay. Yeah, so one thing that, speaking of how we have in the past worked with AI, and I'm assuming this is going to be with Sudowrite as well, the importance of prompts,
Mm.
asking the right question to AI to get what, so some people can get frustrated. Like, it's not giving me what I want. Maybe do you feel it's important to know how to ask it?
Yeah, I do think, especially when you're talking about a more creative workflow, like I'm trying to write a book that I'm going to stick my name on, it's really important to figure out like what your style is and what works for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that just takes a lot of experimentation, right? The same way it would if AI didn't exist, and I was sitting there writing in my journal, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to try and write like Charles Dickens, or I'm going to try and write
Mm-hmm.
like Frank Herbert. And you
Right.
try out a lot of these different styles. You do need to dial in whatever your prompting is.
And so that's
Um,
where I feel that the pseudo-write works. And maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but when I was experimenting with pseudo-write, you go in, and for anybody listening that's never used Sudowrite, I highly suggest you go in and try it. You have a system in the Story Bible. You have this brain dump, which it only gives you a certain, like, I think 3,000,
I think it's 2000. I
maybe
think it's
2,000.
2000.
Yeah, but you kind of brain dump. So you kind of have to hone in your brain dumping. And what I do personally is I go in my notes, I put all these things in, but I brain dump a simplified, and I actually used AI for this. I did a really an extensive description of what I wanted my book to be from beginning to end, backstory all the way to how I wanted to finish. Then I went into my AI that I use for simplification, and I said, okay, simplify this without losing main points. I do it in under 2,000 words. I did that, and then I imported that into my Sudowrite. So it takes that's your story base, correct?
Mhm.
And does it refer to that a lot when you're asking it to do stuff?
It kind of, we have this chart. I'll see if I can send you guys the chart. So it refers to a lot of different parts of the story Bible, depending on what exactly is happening.
Yeah.
One of the things we are finding as we're experimenting with this is that you obviously want the LLM to have context of like your world and your characters and
Mhm.
anything that has come before in your plot and that kind of thing. But you also don't want to overwhelm it with too much
Mhm.
of this data because performance will degrade if you do that. So we're trying to find this balance. So I think it takes the brain dump and it will use that to generate a synopsis, which is like maybe a
Mhm.
cleaner version of that, more focused on plot and less like just kind of sprawling notes.
Which is great.
Um, yeah, and then we take that synopsis and that gets fed into like character and world building element generation.
Mhm.
So if you haven't used Sudowrite before, we have a way of generating characters and generating world building elements like settings, um, lore, magic system. I write a lot of sci-fi, so I have a world building
Which is
element called
great. Yeah.
spaceships.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
that's
super.
perfect for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and that helps the authors who may have built these worlds forget some of their own lore, because people think, oh, you wrote the book. Why do you not know that? Because I haven't read it 12 times like you.
I don't know, but
Yeah.
when I put my books in here, the general synopsis it gave me, I'm like, I'm going to copy and paste this onto every book I own on Amazon because I'm like, wow, why didn't I sum up my book? Like, soon as I read the synopsis for Age of the Sigil 1, I was like, not even close to the description. I gave it on Amazon, and I'm like, okay, this is what I want.
That is something that I like about the synopsis feature when it says generate a synopsis. I can brain dump, and then I've done this a few times where I'll hit generate synopsis, and then I'm like, was I clear in my brain dump? Am I getting the story across? So when it gives me a synopsis and it's not fitting what I'm wanting to fit, I'm like, well, I've done that wrong. I need to go back and kind of tweak it a little bit because it wasn't expressing that as well. And then after that, I mean, you have, like you said, world building, characters. Go ahead.
Sorry, you just said something that made me think of something that's actually kind of cool. Is something that I found is kind of doing this generating with AI can even teach you like what you want it to be. We hear this from users a lot, like it didn't get it right. And it was like, well, did you tell it exactly what you wanted? And you were like, no, I just said this one thing, but like it was wrong. So it's almost like proof ad reductio, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like, I see this, and so I know I don't want it that way, which tells me I do kind of want it this way, which is another way of thinking about that workflow.
Well,
Because AI can only work with what you give it.
well, I know we had another author on here, Jeff Rivera, a while back, and he was teaching me about AI over a year ago. And the prompts he was giving me, I was like, wow, how do you know this is a magical system? And I'm like, no, it's not. You just got to be very descriptive. So
Yeah.
everything, like, because I use it for writing posts for Instagram or articles for my school or something. And I'm like, I get very detailed with these bullet points so that it gives me exactly what I want.
Yes.
Yeah. I think about it almost like I have this cousin who is the same way. You have to be very descriptive when you tell him to do things. Like you'll be like, hey, can you go put the tablecloths on the table? And then you go outside and the tablecloths are folded on top of the table. So what you have to say is, can you please spread the tablecloth out and put it all the way over the table?
Yeah. I mean, it can't read your mind.
Nope.
So you have to be, yes. And that's something that I have found that when we first started, and you just asked to do something, like, well, that's not even what I asked, but it is what you asked. You just didn't give the parameters in which you wanted to expand. So it is important to have the proper understanding of how to talk to AI to get the right responses. And I haven't looked, but is this something that maybe Sudowrite could even do a video on where they express ideas for prompting certain things? A little bit like kind of outside the wheelhouse of what you have. Like, for example, the rewrite. For people who listening who have not used Sudowrite, there is an option you can highlight a certain amount of words and you can say hit rewrite. So you had to have written it. Like you have to basically put it out there. You highlight it and you hit rewrite. It takes you over to the sidebar. And then you can either just do what's already there. You can rephrase. You can make it more descriptive, more show, not tell, or you can customize. Like there's several options, but then there's customize. The customize, you can ask it to be like, okay, write like Dan Brown, write it like Dan Brown, or make it more alluring, make it descriptive, or make it sound like a lore. I did this with one thing. I'm like, this seems kind of like blah in my prologue. I'm like, I want this to sound more like lore in a fantasy novel, but not too much. So I did that. I'm like, oh, wow, that's what I needed. I needed this one sentence right there to change the whole paragraph. But it was just more like it was very helpful in that aspect. I have not ever selected an entire paragraph and copy pasted, but it's very fascinating as I've changed how to prompt it, the things I'll get. But I'm like, I wish I knew the prompts that were out there. I'm like, oh, that's the one I'm wanting. I feel like if I had options, almost like the prompt diary, that would be
I'm
great.
feeling that like that can continue to grow, though. I mean, you go to Amazon right now, it's like the best 100 prompts you'll ever need. And like you said, as the system's learning, the prompts will be changing too.
But that's why I feel like if I'm talking specifically for Sudowrite, though, prompts for rewrite, prompts for this, prompts for the plugins.
That's one thing I think I really appreciate about our community. I don't know if you guys are in our Discord community
We
at all,
are.
but
Yep.
yeah. So like people share prompts and that kind of thing all the time. I think a lot of our ambassadors keep like Notion or Google Docs where they're like, these are a bunch of really good values to try in the genre or the style boxes, which are two boxes that you can use to like influence how your prose is getting written. You know, and we do classes a lot too. And then those are typically deep dives into one aspect of the software because you guys know there's a lot of boxes when you open up Sudowrite. There's a lot of different places to prompt, and each one kind of has little quirks, right? So that's why we do these classes, so you can like deep dive on how to write your story beats for the best results, deep dive on the kind of describe and rewrite prompting tools. And we try to post those videos pretty regularly in the community because things change. Things change really quickly. An example of this is one of our most watched videos on YouTube is like, I don't know, probably a little less than a year old, but it's a totally different version of Story Bible than we have now.
That
so
one.
So people show up and they're like,
where's the new version?
Yeah, people show up and they're like, where's Story Engine? And we're like, oh, it's called Story Bible now and it looks like this.
Yes.
So we do need newer videos. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's the cool thing about Sudowrite. It's not, you're just not some engineers and you put out a product. It seems like a family, like a community. So
Totally.
I have been in Discord several times and watching as we were in beta, and then now it's finally open beta because I had actually submitted, but this was my fault. I'm so busy and teaching. I was like, wait a minute, why can I not import it? I'm supposed to ask to be part of beta. So, but yes, I'm in there now.
Story of Jaime's life.
Yes.
Yeah. And we'll be doing more improvements to the import coming shortly. There's a couple of things we wanted to get in there first. So I don't know if you guys are in the structured outline beta at all, but
yeah, I am.
Okay, yeah. So our outline box before we did the structured outline had like a pretty small word limit, and as you guys know, it's pretty hard to write like a whole outline for a novel in whatever that word limit was. So we wanted to get rid of that limit and really make it unlimited, but the import process went in before that feature was done developing, and there are some improvements we want to make to how the import is handling the outline, which we'll do once structured outline is like in place and the beta is over for that and it has wide release. So I'm really excited to see what can happen because I think
I'm excited too because like I had to do it. I had to test it. I put all 3 novels together and they're close to 200,000 words, at least for the novel import, and nothing. But I get it. I mean, you already said. So I put the other ones in and I'm like, my brain is kind of fried because it's pulling things up I didn't even think about. Now, of course, like the character area, and I already knew this going in, you know, when you dump a novel in there, which they're like 60,000, 68,000 a piece, it only do so many. So I got like maybe 10 characters, the main ones. But I got a character list. I was like, well, let me test this. And I threw one in. I mean, it was talking about the character, how they look, their mannerisms, and all of this. I'm like, that's all I really need to do. And I think there is like a character dump because I'm thinking of all kinds of things, you know, the monsters I've created for this world, dumping those in a magical language. So I'm excited. I'm excited to see where this goes. I just have to figure out how to get all 3 novels into one.
Well, one thing we are working on right now is more support for series, because I think something we've heard from writers is that series is a great way for marketability, right? Especially if you have these kind of like interconnected standalones, because then you don't have to wait for somebody to pick up book 1. Like you got 6 entry points into your world, right? So we are trying to make it so that when you could import 1 and it could take all of the characters and world building elements from that 1, and then you could import 2 into a separate project, and then you can put those together into a series so that they're sharing this character and world building data like from project to project.
You just made Jaime so happy.
I've got all 3 of them in there and I'm like, what do I do now? And I'm cool with, I mean, because you got a lot of minor characters, so I'm fine if I get a dump or add them in there. So when is that available?
That should be coming soon. We are hoping to have that launch probably sometime in November. This is my other baby. My 2 babies are import and series support. So yeah, there's a couple of planes we got to land first. So we will kind of see what's happening timing wise, but I would anticipate some version of that, even if it's just a beta, probably coming out before Thanksgiving.
Okay. Yeah, definitely want to be a part of that. One other, I mean,
hit us up if you want in on that beta.
I do. Yes, I went in on that beta, but also
What's the word limit? Because I have a series, but it's like mine's way bigger.
yeah, that's the
You'll
only thing.
probably have to import one installment at a time to begin with.
Yeah, but
And
even
this
with
is
her
just,
series, like what's you're over 120K for even one book in the series, though.
Yeah.
yeah, that could be tricky. That
Would
we will probably address down the line. The main issue there is, and you guys please feel free to interrupt and stop me if I'm getting too technical. LLMs have a context window, which is like the amount of stuff that they can ingest before they run out of room. And for the biggest LLMs that we have found to be performant in this area, that's going to be about 200,000 tokens. Tokens are not quite the size of a word. They are typically maybe 50 to 75% of a word. So you can think about it as being around 150,000 words. And this is inclusive of input and output. So we can't let you do 150,000 because then there's nothing
then you don't
left
have nothing.
for
Yeah.
the output. Yeah. So we're experimenting with some different strategies around like taking everything in chunks and like cycling through to see if we can get, partition everything and process it bit by bit. But we're finding that a lot of the times when we do that, the LLM kind of loses the ideas of the holistic whole. So it's really just about us trying to figure out a strategy where we can take that on.
Now I'm excited because like as soon as that's available, I'm going to import all the books that I need to finish because I could be doing them so much faster. This is going to sound like a dumb question, but you had sent me some videos, and I swear to you, I saw somewhere where it said if you had a character list, you could import them all at once. And I cannot find that because I thought if I got like all these characters, and if I can import them instead of go in here and actually type them one by one, I would do that. But I don't see it in this. So what am I missing?
If you look at the Story Bible, the header for the characters section that says characters, and then there's that like little button that says customize where you can customize your traits.
Yep, where are we at? Characters. Mine doesn't really say characters. It says, oh, it does. It just says customize. I see it as a character.
So
Boom.
next to the customize button, that 3 dots, you click that, and there's an import.
Yes.
Yeah. No, it's confusing. We have like 3 different ways to import right now. So.
No, I dig it because now, like, I got a monster list too. You probably have this, but if not, I want to throw this idea out there, especially since you're in fantasy. What if you've created a magical language for spells? That would be a really cool. And I don't see that in here, or maybe it is, but it just didn't grasp anything from the wizard spells that I was creating.
Yeah, we have, I would say that would probably fall under world building. You could probably create a world building card for like your language.
Yeah, I love this. It's political. I'm seeing it's breaking down like the quadrants of Austrand, where it's like Australia about 1 million years ago. And so if I can add a card, that would be great. Yes, because I'm blown away by everything I go down here, and I'm like, what? I didn't even think about this. So,
yeah. All right. So
I'm satisfied.
I mean, for those who have not used Sudowrite, it's great. But I want to talk about just real quickly the legality of using Sudowrite. And a lot of times when AI, or not AI, Amazon, and we use LSI, Lightning Source, to upload our books, it is asking you if you use AI. What percentage of using AI, since Sudowrite typically doesn't write it for you, it's usually a tool that you have to create. How is that? Like, should people be using or crediting Sudowrite for helping? How is this working?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think right now, a lot of the issues around copyright, around legalities for AI is just the Wild West. I don't think anybody really knows the answer to this. I have talked to lawyers, and they don't know. And I'm like, well, if the copyright lawyer doesn't know what's going on, then nobody knows what's going on. So we always just advise complying with whatever publishing platform you are using. Typically, they have some guidelines around what constitutes AI assisted versus like assisted with AI. I can't remember. Amazon has like two ways of saying it, and one of them is like, I edited this, and the other one is like, I didn't. I can't remember. But yeah, we always just advise complying with whatever publishing platform you're using, because at the end of the day, like, it's better just to be above board.
Yeah.
Well, and again, whenever I come up with a challenge, I experiment with it, like we did with AI. I use, and this is going to lead to another question that I have listed, but I use Sudowrite, and I'm always making sure that I don't lose something. I copy from Sudowrite whatever I've written, and I put it into Grammarly, and Grammarly will go and say, like, change this, here's just whatever, the editing part of it before I even send it to my editor. And then I'll put it into my Word doc. Well, here's the thing. When I put it into Grammarly, there's the option for plagiarism, and which I use a lot for my schoolwork to make sure I'm not plagiarizing. I'm like, I know I wrote this, but did I copy that word for word? Or is it just me thinking this? Or was that actually said in this writing? I don't know. I'll do the plagiarism thing. Well, now they've added plagiarism and AI generated content. When you click that, it's supposed to let you know if it's been generated by AI. Well, I did two documents, one that I used a little bit more AI on and one that I used none. The one that I used none on was like, you've used 18% AI. I'm like, no, I didn't.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, hold on here. How can it say that? So I went in and I was like, how does the AI generating scrubbing software know if I've used AI or not? It literally says it does not.
Yeah.
It does not know. It's just guessing based on the way AI. Like when I saw that student do it, I'm like, oh, that's so AI, as we say on here. That's so AI. But I feel like almost I've trained my brain from experimenting with AI to respond how AI would in writing. So I feel like maybe I've kind of like it's trained me.
No, I wouldn't worry about that too much. Those AI like sensors are notoriously unreliable.
Oh yeah, but I'm just like,
It's one
what?
of the great ironies of AI is that it has no idea when it's looking at itself.
I'm like, none of this sounds like anything I would not come up with. I'm like, this is funny. Which leads me to my next question. With Sudowrite, I use Grammarly for like a lot of things, but will Sudowrite import an editing tool, like an editor that will help with book? Because we've told people in our episodes that book editing is a lot different than your high school English teacher. So is there going to be an import system where you can say, okay, now edit this for a book editor, like, or is this a poetry, or is this whatever I'm writing fiction wise? Will there be an editing system that's a little bit more easy? Because I feel like sometimes my grammar in Sudowrite is not the greatest. It will correct my words, but my Grammarly is attached to it as well.
Do you use the Grammarly browser extension? Because I believe that does work inside Sudowrite.
But it doesn't do commas. It doesn't do any of the other stuff. It only does a lot of the misspelling. It does a lot of misspelling. It doesn't do like layout stuff like that. It doesn't do that until I import it into Grammarly, like until I copy paste it into Grammarly. It'll do the basics, but it won't do a lot of it. It's almost like now when I'm doing it in an email for Grammarly, or I'm doing Grammarly for like writing a discussion post that's always down there in the little corner, it does way more, but it's almost like when Sudowrite only does misspellings.
That's so interesting. Yeah, that's a good shout out. I think we've heard from a lot of our users before that like the editing and kind of revision process is, well, I don't know about you guys, but for me, it's always like the least fun part of actually writing.
Yes, I hate editing.
If there's a way that we can make it like more fun and exciting, we'd love to do that. I think it's something we're looking into. Everybody has such wildly different editing and revision processes and workflows. I think because like it can be really boring, so people find ways to make it work for them. Which was kind of the idea behind the plugins. It's like, well, everybody edits differently, everybody revises differently. So let's give people a way to like make an edit that works for them. But I think a lot of the Sudowrite stuff in particular skews more conceptual revision and less, like you're saying, like grammatical editing, like making sure my sentence structures are correct. So that's something we could look into.
You're welcome. No, I'm kidding.
Always looking for ideas. Always.
Right? Yes. And I'm always up for whatever's new on there. So yeah. Oh, okay. All right. So for our listeners, like I said, we were super stoked to have Ginni on this morning, but we're even more stoked for what Sudowrite is offering to our listeners. So Ginni, would you like to share the giveaway that we're giving and explain the giveaway to our listeners?
Okay, so yes, we are super excited to be giving away some credits. So for those of you who have not used Sudowrite before, credits are kind of like an in Sudowrite currency that allow you to do AI generations.
Like
And
Bitcoin.
yeah, and if you do use Sudowrite, you know all about credits, so I don't have to explain them to you. So what we're going to do is we will be giving away 15 of our like medium-sized credit packs, which is 500,000 credits or 500,000. This has about $20 monetary value, and all you have to do is go to www.sudowrite.com/bonus and pop in your email and information into that form. And the first 15 people to fill in that form will get these credits sent to their account. Couple of caveats. You need to be a Sudowrite subscriber to get the credits. So if you're not a Sudowrite subscriber, go to Sudowrite, become a subscriber, and then fill in the form. And also, if you already are a Sudowrite subscriber, this is totally valid. You can go in, you can fill in the form, no worries. But you may be familiar with the difference between expiring credits and unexpiring credits. These credits will never expire, so you will have them forever, and they will be the last ones to used up. Expiring credits are always used up first, so you don't have to worry about them like going away right away. Yeah, so that's sudowrite.com/bonus.
Yeah, and I will have all of this in the show notes. So when you're writing sudo, it's Sudowrite. Just so everybody puts that. Whenever I'm typing, when I'm like talking to text, and then I do Sudowrite, it always spells it, of course, with a P.
Yeah, it does.
But yes, this is awesome. And I really hope if you're an aspiring writer that you do take advantage of what this offer is, because Sudowrite is a great tool, especially when you're stuck. Or if you have ADHD, it's going to keep you functioning for just different aspects. It's going to keep your characters organized, your world building. If you're building like a world that has a lot of facets, it's great for that. It just in general, it's a great tool, especially for fiction writing.
And I'm always making the joke, I'm writing 11 books simultaneously. It'll literally be happening now.
Yeah.
Jamie's project window will look like a Rolodex from the 80s.
Too funny.
All right. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Miss Ginni?
Oh goodness, no, I think we just about covered it. Do you guys? Yeah.
Yeah, and
Thanks so much for having me here. It's
absolutely,
been awesome.
Absolutely. All right, so if you'd like to find Ginni, with not Ginni specifically, if you'd like to find Jenny's work at Sudowrite and find out what she's doing, you can go to sudowrite.com and you can see all that stuff, and make sure you listen to this over again to hear what the giveaway is, and so that way you can take advantage of those 500,000 credits there. But if you want to talk to us, or you want to send us a shout out or give us an idea, you can go to alwayswritepodcast@gmail.com, or you can even click on our icons if you go to our website at alwayswritepodcast.com. Wait a minute, did I do that twice? Did I say Gmail?
No, you said Gmail the first time.
Every time I say .com, I feel like I repeated myself because it's
I'm rubbing off on you.
Anyways, you can click those icons. You can follow us and subscribe to us on YouTube. You can go to Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts. We're available on all those platforms. You can go to our social media, even though we only typically put things out on Facebook and Instagram, but you can go follow us and see what's upcoming. I'm excited that we had this episode. And until next time, I'm author Karisa DeLay.
I'm author Jaime Vendera, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Thanks for listening, and always write.